What is going on, guys? Dinner vs. All Gaming with my review of Akame Got Killed episode 3. And this episode, once again, like the last two, it was definitely awesome. We got some serious background when it came to Mind. And her character, it is definitely unique because you can see how her tough past has now kind of shaped her into this rather arrogant, cocky, and a very, like a well-desired woman, so to speak, because we learn what her goal is, and she pretty much joined Night Raid so that she can become rich and live a life of luxury. So that right there was definitely interesting. But the episode itself, it starts off where we have Night Raid. They are now out because they actually learned that there are these intruders there that have found their base, and they of course have to kill them because there is no way that they can let the people like return to wherever they came from, or possibly sell this location, because obviously people do want to find Night Raid and they do want to stop him. So right now we have the group out, and they're all like taking on these group of intruders. And so we see at first it was Blue Lant and Tatsumi, and we see now that like Blue Lant here, he really wants to get close to Tatsumi, and he like kind of gave him this advice because Tatsumi isn't really used to like group combat. And so Blue Line here, he also told him, to call him either handsome or bro. And of course Tatsumi, is gonna pick bro. And so right now we have that thing going. And as someone that like read, the manga, I really cannot wait for you guys to see where they're, like I cannot wait for you guys to see how far their bonds go, because I will tell you that this right here, it will be a special one. But because Tatsumi is now calling him bro, we see now that like Blue Line here, he showed off his Imperial arm, or his Tengu, which is called Incurcio. I'm probably saying that wrong, but we saw like this massive demon, appear behind Blue Line, and it like covered his body in the armor that we saw him wear in the first episode. And I gotta say that like transformation, it was definitely cool. I was digging that. And we see later on, like what he did to those intruders. But let me go in order though, because at first we saw, I believe it was Akame. We saw her now, like there were like these three guards that were around her, and they were actually thinking that like they can take care of her. And so we saw like in an instant Akame cuts them down, and we see that like two of them had died from like their wounds to the neck, but the third one was like still alive, and he actually thought that he could like take Akame down with him. But we saw now that like thanks to her own Imperial arm, like this poison had like spread through his body, and that right there is what killed him. So that was pretty awesome. We saw Mine and Shelley. We saw them working together as there was like this one guy that was like running away, and then another guard or another intruder had tried to sneak up on Mime, and we saw Shelley just like cut him in half, and that right there was brutal. But then we saw Mime's Imperial weapon, her pumpkin, that right there powered up, and it fired like this laser that like completely obliterated this guy. That right there was awesome. But then we have Lubok, who the victim was a woman, sadly, but of course he could not show her any mercy, and we just see like all these wires they had like cut into her, and then like he made them dig into her body, and that right there is what killed her, like that blood loss. And then we have Leone, who was pretty much just like using her fist to kill the people, because we all know that like thanks to her weapon, she like pretty much becomes half beast, half human, and with that beast like strength, she can defeat like these like common intruders. And so then we have Blue Line, and with this spear of his, he pretty much cut all these guys that were around him like the pieces, and that right there was awesome. So they like dealt with every intruder, and now once again nobody knows where their base is. But now we see that like Tatsumi, he actually has to train with Mime, but she has not woken up yet. And then we have Shayla here, who actually offered him to go wake her up. But then we have their boss. She had made Tatsumi do it, And when he went to her room, she was up, but like she was only in her bra and panties. And of course, because Tatsumi saw her, she got really pissed off. And we see her now actually find her weapon, and she made like these two massive holes in the wall, and she even hit this forest like far off. So that would they go to show you, how crazy her range is. So she was like definitely, like I said, and she could call him a pee-pee Tom, which was hilarious. But eventually, when they calm down, we see now that they go to the city, and while they're there, you would think it's weird for like Night Raid to have to be walking around, it's like so out in the open. But it's because the capital, they have no idea that like Tatsumi and Mine are part of them. So of course they would have no reason to like suspect them. And so now, while they're there, we see the wanted posters once again, and we see now that there was like one that stood out to Tatsumi a lot, and it was Blue Line, because we saw how different he looked back then compared to now, and that right there was like one heck of a change. But I do gotta say, I prefer Blue Line's old hairstyle compared to the new one, but that's just me. And so now we see that this like so-called training that they were like going through, it was just Mine out there shopping, and you could tell that like Tatsumi was like getting annoyed here, because he thought they were doing some like serious training and not just her, like doing what she wanted. And we see now that when they were at this cafe, we have them, kind of going back and forth here, but like Tatsumi definitely knows that he still has a long way to go. And I also forgot that while they were out, there were like these two like much older boys. They were like picking on this like little girl, and she was a refugee, and they were just like bothering her. And then first, when Mine had Tatsumi, deal with them, I thought that maybe he killed them, because I kind of forgot this scene in the manga. But all he did was to like cut their pants down, and they just ran away. So that right there was hilarious. But while they were at the cafe though, we see now that all the people, they were like gathering, and the reason why they were gathering is because we had the people that were pretty much crucified, because they were like on these wooden platforms, and I do believe that their body was like either pinned to it. I definitely know one woman had like this whip around her neck that was like choking her. And so this right here was kind of like the darkness of the capital, because they do these public executions, on a regular. And Tatsumi also noticed that this capital, it definitely was not what he thought it was, because we see now that like pretty much all these people, like if you're not rich, like all these common folk, they were like walking around with like these gloomy looks on their faces. And so then we go back to the emperor, and we see now that apparently, one of his soldiers, one of his officers, apparently this guy kind of like betrayed the kingdom, and now he being sentenced to death by like being dragged by bulls. And now we see that the prime minister, who like puts on this little nice guy act in front of the emperor, but we saw that when he got in front of the man, you just saw like this evil look on his face, because he said that he gonna take care of his wife to like the fullest extent, and you just see him like dripping saliva from his mouth. So this guy's like definitely a pig, and I really cannot wait till like somebody can kill this guy, because I'll tell you this right now, this guy is not dead yet. Like in the manga, I can tell you that he's still alive, so I have no idea when he will die, but I am definitely looking forward to that chapter or episode. Like we all know that the chapter comes first, so I cannot wait for that chapter, because I know that when he does die, I will definitely enjoy that. But now Tatsumi and Mine, they have returned because they had a job to do, and apparently the person that like they were going to kill, this guy is related to the prime minister, and he actually uses that name to like kidnap women and beat them to death. And so this guy right here, he like lives this like life of luxury, because his house, it was freaking huge. That right there, nobody can deny. He had a pretty big house, and he also had like these 5 guards, and apparently these guards, they are like trained in the TARP martial arts style that was that you could learn in the capital. So these guys were like very skilled, but they were they were like this one guard that was like definitely better than the other. But I would definitely say that for a little bit later on. And so at first we have everybody else. So for Tatsumi and Mime, they were like ready to take on those guards because Mime here was the one that was actually going to kill this man when he came out. And when he finally did, Tatsumi was kind of like worried here because he had all these women, like around him. So of course he was like wondering how the heck could Mime, actually hit him with like all these innocent people around him. And he thought that maybe she wouldn't care, and right when he was in the middle of talking, we should see him take a shot, and we see her take a shot, and she actually hit this guy dead on, and that right there was a pretty good freaking shot. But then we see that after his death, we see all these guards they're now charging out. Charging out. And we see that they encountered Night Raid, and of course like the gang here they had defeated him easily. But Akame, she was the first one to notice that like one of them wasn't here, and Lubok, he also couldn't kill one, so that right there was like a serious problem because they were like wondering where he was. And so then we have Mime and Tatsumi. They were like making their way through the forest on this route that would get them back to the meeting point, to the rendezvous point. And when they got there, we see now that there's this last guard who was probably their most skilled one. He had appeared out of nowhere, and we see now that Tatsumi was the first one to notice him, and so he actually pushed Mime out the way while like he took the hit. And this guy, he actually had some skill because he was like the top student, I believe, in that martial arts style, but that was like 10 years ago. So clearly things have changed, but his skill is still there because we saw Mime trying to shoot him, but he was just like dodging all of her shots. But luckily, luckily for her, we have Tatsumi there who actually, like tricked this guy into like blocking his attack while like he took hold of him. And we just see this guy wailing on Tatsumi to like let him go. And we see now that like Tatsumi had this idea to get Mime, to shoot him while like Tatsumi was like holding on to him. And it was funny how she thought that like he was risking his life for her, but that wasn't the case. But we see now that like when she took that shot, it was epic. This guy now has like this massive hole in his chest, and of course he died from that. And I also forgot to mention, like while they were walking through the forest, we learned about Mime past. And in her past, it is definitely, like pretty bad because this girl, she's like half foreigner. So growing up for her, it was like very hard because people had, just discriminated against her and no one accepted her. But because of that, she now wants to have enough money, from like being an assassin so that she can live a life of luxury like she wants to. So that right there is a reason for doing it. But it was funny though, like how after she had killed this guy and she was like actually praising Tatsumi, he out of nowhere like flicked her head, and it was because she had actually like burned off some of his hair, and that right there was like definitely hilarious. But you can see now that these two, they are definitely bonding, and through like the episode, you should see at times that like Mime here, she was like blushing at him, so maybe she had fallen for him. Like you never know. But after they had killed this guy, we see the other members of Night Raid. They're now there, so clearly it was a job well done. And we see now that like Tatsumi is definitely getting closer with Night Raid, and that right there is a pretty good thing because as a group, you like definitely want to see them all as like a huge family. But then in the capital, we have like this one guy. He was looking at the wanted posters, but like mainly Akame. And apparently, this guy here, he really wants to kill her because just like her, he also had just like an imperial weapon. And we see now that, obviously his weapon it's a thing on his head because what else would it be? Like nobody else will wear a weird freaking headpiece like that. But we see now that like two soldiers had tried to, to get him, to like turn around and surrender, because this guy looked suspicious. So they had want to take him in, and we see now that in an instant this guy here just beheaded him, and we have no idea how. But this guy has some serious skill, and so next week it seems that he actually going to make his move, and he'll be taking on a night raid. So next week it will definitely be another fantastic episode. So personally for me, I get the episode a 10 out of 10, but that's just me. But of course I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And as always, please do not forget to like the video and subscribe, because that really helps me out. And you guys take it easy. I will see you all next time.